Hi folks, I'm Carleton Legg. I'm the director here at the Industrial Museum, and Rachel asked me many moons ago, did I know anything about that building across the street? And I said, I do know a little bit about it, so I looked at an opportunity to learn some more about it. And as I did, I realized it was kind of like a rabbit hole that had a lot of information. But we had a lot of pictures too. So today is going to be more of a picture story with a little bit of information flipped into it. So I went over today to the Robinson. Rachel said, maybe you can get a tour, Carleton. Maybe you can get us in there to get a tour. So I went over there today, and it's high security. You can get in, but you can't get in. So the gentleman there was very, very amiable, and I guess it's 50% rented right now, which I think is pretty good. It has there are some income, I think, requirements. There are 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 1-bedrooms, and I snuck a few pictures in of the floor plans and some professionally done photos of the inside. So, I'm not shilling for them. I don't think I'd want the train going by my bedroom, but who knows? You get used to that. My son, who lives in Brooklyn, tells me all the time.
It's residential or it's commercial?
It's residential, right across the street. It was commercial. Funny you should ask that. Right now, we're going to learn about that building. It's called the Robinson Building, and actually, it was 3 buildings. So here we are, guys. So this is a sketch of the Robinson Building. You've got names of companies on here. S.W. Gould, Cummings, and my eyes are not that good, but I'll fill you in on some of the other companies that were there. Originally, 3 buildings. No raised train tracks. That didn't come until 1908, I think. And then this was built in 1875. 1875, you say? Yes, 1875. So 1875, Mr. Robinson, the Robinson family. Do you know the Robinson family? I think you do. The Robinsons were famous for button making. They started in North Attleboro making buttons. It was so successful, they had a neighborhood in North Attleboro, Robinsonville, and they built Attleboro's reputation as jewelry and button-making pioneers. So George W. Designed a better way to make a metal stamp button. He learned that from Edward Price, who was a gentleman who taught people what he knew about button making and stamping. He learned from the Frenchmen, the infamous Frenchmen who came here during the Revolutionary War times, had learned button stamping in France, and passed that on to lots of other folks. So the Robinson family, George's brother, Colonel Obed, and his son Otis, they started the first company in the country, and for the most part, made lots of gold buttons. Buttons for military, buttons for city service, and trains and railroads. We have a display in there that shows all the different types of buttons that were made by the Robinson Company, and then after that it was the D. Evans Company, who, just as the Robinson Company was beginning to move on to better things. They made a lot of money. They actually moved to, a descendant of them made glass doorknobs in Boston. Rhett Butler, you know Rhett Butler. If you don't, you probably will. Rhett is a principal of the E.R. Butler Company, and he came to us when he moved his factory here to Attleboro and said, I know a lot about the Robinson people. I'm going to share some of that. And he did, shared a lot of information. And he's always sharing great stuff with us. In his never-ending quest to find the South Attleboro fire station, where the Sadler Company is on Route 1. Or the E.R. Butler Manufacturing Company right now. So that'll be another day. So the company made a lot of money. And so Otis and Ovid's family basically retired out of the business. And one moved to Providence. And then at the time, Attleboro was doing really well. And so he decided, I'm going to build a jewelry manufacturing building right here on Union Street. And he built 3 buildings. And that's basically the end product of what he built. And you can see, how did that building across the street end up as one when you see 3 here? So at the time you had this F.H. Sadler company. Sadler made not just eyeglasses, but they also made jewelry. This little guy down here is Vanier and Slattery, and they were plumbers, and they specialized in sanitary ventilation. So all these buildings had to have that ventilation. He had himself a prime little spot down here, the plumber did. Smith Crosby is another company right here. Regnal Bidney, and who is these guys? And that's another Bidney combination. No, I guess that's continued Regnal Bidney. But this was what it looked like when they were done. This is a picture from our collection over here.
And where is Union Street?
So Union Street would probably be beyond this building here. So railroad tracks, the building that's out there now, which is 1, 3, and then Union Street would be the first street after that.
And they had the front of the building towards the track?
They did. And well, I think they had an entryway that way. And I would say advertising a little bit. You had trains coming in all the time. I don't know if I included it in the show, but there's a sign in 1920 as you come into the train station, and this is when it was elevated, and it says, "Bring your business to Attleboro, the hub of the jewelry world." And it lists all the reasons you should come to Attleboro. The fact that it was in between Providence and Boston, that there was a huge workforce, that it already had a successful manufacturing and production business, and there was a wonderful place to live. So it was a big old billboard, and it had a big old round sign that says, Attleboro, hub of the jewelry world. So when people say it was like the capital of the jewelry world, I can't verify that. I can verify hub of the jewelry world, so I always use that expression. I don't want to mislead. So I tried to split this one up and blow it up, and it didn't work. So same building, tried to pop it up a little bit more. This was 1875. Now, another angle. 1875, I think this is Union Street. Frontage of what there is out there now, and then a building, an in-between building. I think it turned out to be a coal storage space, and then behind it were these 2 buildings. So I think that's the back of that building you see right there. And here it tells you about some of the companies that are in there. This is building number 3. So J.M. Fisher and Company, F.W. Weaver, McRae and Keeler, Wheaton, Richards Company, and Attleboro Press Company. So what I'm going to show you, because we had 25 great photos given to us by Dr. Robert Keeler and his family years ago before he passed away. And I grabbed his biography to do a little work on it. We have it here at the museum. He wrote this. So when Dr. Keeler, who was a pediatrician here in Attleboro, he retired to the Cape, and for 15 years, he put together An Old Man's New Bio, or The Keelers of Attleboro, 1880 to 1987. It's neat. It's got some good resources in it, and I might even, if you're not tired of listening to me, grab and read a few lines from it. Not high-level prose, but good information. So, a little closer, but not so well focused. So this I got a lot of my information from the Massachusetts, what is it called now? I want to get this right. And it's the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System. It's called MACRIS. It's an online database. So you can go there and look up the 150 different buildings in Attleboro and their history. And this building just had some added information done because of the new remodeling. So they did some more work. I believe they qualified for some kind of a historical credit when they built the house, built the building, remodeled the building. So neat stuff. This is Sanford. Sanford had a whole series of fire maps for insurance purposes, and so you can see my little handy dandy, yeah, it's not working. So building 3, building 1, building 2, and all these inside buildings were coal and acid lockers, coal shuttles, acid lockers, chemical lockers. The private way is basically where the driveway is, I think, on the building right now. And then the museum would be right about here or here, but it wasn't built. The museum, this building you're in now, was built in 1899. And this was 1885, so. The Great Fire of Attleboro happened 1898 and took out a lot of those buildings that were there and the jewelry shops. So I'm going to give you the McRae-Keeler inside scoop. So in that building was McRae-Keeler Company. That, I believe, is Charles B. Keeler. He was the owner. There he is again, and Arthur A. McRae. And they were jewelry makers. They did watch bands, they did chains, they did pins, they did cufflinks, a lot of different things. Great office. My desk, that's my desk. I love it. It's organized. He knew where everything was, kind of. But, so these pictures were given to us, as I said, by Dr. Keeler and his family, and they kind of give you a real taste for what it was like to be in one of those factories around 1880 or 81. Office and accounting. Loved the paneling in the back, the wainscoting. It looks a lot like this composite module building, which is on the corner of Union and Wall. Is it Mill? Mill. Union and Mill. And if you go into their office, if you can get through the security, it's, I think, you know, it's that. That's why I'm a little unsure if this building is the same building as it says it is. The tool and stamp and department, you can see how basically everything was belt driven. You can see the drive shafts along the top of the building, which is the way this building or any other mill building was probably set up, depending on the machinery they had. The bench has a few bench holders or piece holders in front of them, a nice old tool chest right there. So I'm thinking these were the guys who made the things that made everything run, like these cases right behind me. The soldering, enameling, and assembling. How do I know it was soldering? I asked my assistant, Leanne, and she said, I think it's soldering because of the gas. And I want you to, I mean, this gives you a perfect example of what is it like to work in a building that's like 100 feet long? Well, it's 100 feet of people sitting at their benches working. And I love the lights. If you look over, we have a little fake assembly line out there, and we have similar lights to those. Polishing and buffing. Loved the way they dressed. The men with the, and then you get a real good example of the belt and drive shaft situations that are going on and how they engage and disengaged. Whole lot of stuff on that back wall. So this was one side of the building, and you can see by the light in the background, there must have been, you know, they were 50 feet wide, so something else was going on the other side. This was kind of a mixed space, looked like they were doing some assembling, some sorting, maybe some chain making, and then, of course, you got to have a couple of guys in the back telling everybody what to do.
I have women working there.
A lot of women. Well, why? Well, this is why we have women working there. Look at my hands, and then look at the average woman's hands. They are much more dexterous, they're slender, they are more coordinated, they could do the things that needed to be done. Guys' hands were great for hitting those, you know, 5-pound sledges against some of those hub and die machines. So I go out in the schools and talk to the kids about it, and I always ask the teachers to hold, which are mostly women, hold their hands up. Then I hold up mine, and I'll say, so what do you notice? One kid says, your hands are kind of fat. I said, you know, they're short little fat like hot dogs. And they went, yeah.
I get sausage.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And they said, and then I said, what do you notice about your teacher's hands? Well, they're slender and fine. And I said, well, it is a generalization, but they were better. And they could make a living. It wasn't probably, I know it wasn't the same as what the men were getting paid, but it was reasonable enough for them to work there. The press, drop press, foot press room. So they would drop those things down and punch out different pieces for watch bands or other pieces of jewelry.
Do you think they just dressed up because they knew it was picture day? Or?
No, you know, everything that I see about people in the 1800s to the early 1900s, they dressed like that. Hey, if you can wear a vest like that, do it, you know, it's more power to you. Now, this was a classic 3-story wooden jewelry building back around the time that the buildings were made over here. The big difference, from wood to brick. So I think this is the Capron building, myself.
This building right here?
Yeah. Well, I think it burned down. Oh. It was on the corner of Capron and Union, and during the fire of 1899 or 1898, I think it burned down. And I don't think they rebuilt it. I don't, wow. But it is similar to that, yeah. And water towers in the back, some type of an elevator, maybe in the middle. And I haven't been able to nail down where this picture came from.
That might be at the corner of Union and Mill Street.
Yeah.
If the railroad was not elevated, Mill Street is not there.
Yeah.
And they still have that...
That centerpiece there? That composite modules then. That's, yeah, okay. There you go. That's what I thought. I said, this isn't this building, but...
There's that same entrance on Union Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, no, that looks just like
That's why you show a group of people who have some knowledge of photo you can't identify, and they can identify it for you. So it is currently the composite modules building, which eventually will end up like the Robinson building, is what I'm told. Oh. So what was this? Order filling and packaging, hairstyles, just like the ladies we have out here. Lots of stuff going on there. They definitely posed well for these photos, didn't they? More packaging and sorting and shipping. Just amazing, I think, to see just what was going on in these buildings. You see the outside of the buildings all the time. You don't always see the inside. These are chain machines. We've got a ton of them around the museum now. We're trying to pull them out and rejuvenate them. We have a small one or a big one that works from 1855 out there, but you can see this is where I think the chain would come down. They got the drive shafts there, and under the watchful eye of the chain making men. And the big press room, powerful, deep, heavy hub and die presses that would press out, stamp out large size pieces. And you can see the huge belts and flywheels and other things in the background. I'm amazed that if a building could hold that weight, then it's a pretty sturdy building. Some more jewelry assemblers. So again, they look like they're just, we have this display behind the screen called findings. And basically jewelry is putting findings, different pieces together with chain or with clasps or with different small pieces. And I think this is what they're doing here. We have an old piece out in the floor of the museum that has 30 drawers, and each drawer has a number on it. And the drawers, the numbers correspond to a certain piece. So they would pick their material for their orders from those drawers, bring them to their assembly places, and do the order. Chains and chain makers, some smaller ones in the back. These guys, I think, are engravers, because they have these die balls that you use when you engrave things. It's usually a round weighted ball, and then you can set your different size hubs, or not hubs, I can't think of the name right now, but it's basically a vise that you put in there. Then you put whatever you're trying to make, engrave, whatever design and that kind of thing, in there, do it, go on to the next one, release it, go on. We get about 20 of the die balls in the back that people have given to us that it's a lost art. You know, everything is, CNC or computer run, so. But you can still get a job doing it in some places. There are lots of small, like cottage jobs. Is that a repeat? I think it is. Jewelry assemblers with their soldering. Again, you got pieces laid out in front of them. This one's, you got a little mixed group here too. And then big flywheel in the back, so there was some larger machine in the back. Again, more chain making and chain machines. Loved the array of coats and hats. I mean, look, man, those are, don't ever say that there wasn't style in Attleboro, because there was. Again, packing and shipping. And the light must have been great in some of these places too, because of all the windows. And yes. I'll get to a little bit of info about that. These are the polishers. So you've got the different grit in those big things behind you of medium that they would use, and they would put it in like a tumbling machine to take off that initial layer, and then they would do some hand polishing too, or some other degreasing or that kind of thing, then more polishing. A pretty interesting process. And then here we go with the 1947. So basically that was what Robinson Building looked like, 1, 2, and 3, in between 1875 when it was built and probably 1920, 1930, maybe a little bit more innovation and upgrading over the time. But so this map was from 1945. This was after all those smaller companies had moved out. Now, let me get my little list of. So in 1899, there were 15 companies in the Robinson Building. 1899, there were 15. They were the W.H. Harrington Company, the J.W. Luther. They had a spot in the old steam power building, I guess, which was over off of, in this neighborhood. I think it was behind Pine and Dunham Street. It burned, and they moved into the basement of the Robinson Building. W.H. Wilmarth and Company, 175 employees and 3 floors of building number, what was it? Building number 3, 10,000 square feet. So they were manufacturing a lot of stuff. Attleboro, in 1930, 49% of Attleboro's gross income was jewelry manufacturing. And probably, I don't have the number offhand, but it was in the tens of millions. So they did pretty well. They were doing pretty, evidenced by the fire of 1898 when 20 companies burned down. Within a year, they were all, except for 2, rebuilt. So the owners had insurance, they had foresight, and they never skipped a beat with their orders. They were able to take space that was in other buildings here in the city and utilize it to still produce their jewelry. So who else? We had J.M. Fisher and Company in 1880, the Bliss Brothers and Everett Company in 1876, F.H. Sadler in 1881, a couple of Crosby and Smith, J.T. Inman and Company still exists today. And I believe they're in North Attleboro. That was 1882 in building number 1, which I think was right on that rail line. It was right close to the tracks. F.W. Weaves and Company in building 3, which would have been right on the Union Street, and they had 4,500 square feet and 50 employees. They called them operatives. So any research I read said operatives on it. So you were an operative back then, like a spy. There was the F.J. or F.L. Torrey and Company, and Torrey and Kirchhoff were the owners. And they, again, did all these different kinds of chains and cufflinks and collar pins that were used. And then they progressed beyond that when fashion changed. Smith and Crosby in 1872, they moved into the building in 1875, the Robinson Building. And then around 1940, over this time, the buildings were still separate. And you can see here, by this 1940, the Foster Metal Company bought the whole building. And they used it to produce mostly cufflinks and tie bars and tie tacks and watch bands. So flexible watch bands. I got a photo later of that. But you can see this was building 1, and then that space, remember, that was in between in the first drawing? Yeah. That's been getting kind of connected, and then they started backfilling it so that it would become one building. Like, that's what they did back then. They wanted to connect everything because, when you let them out, you couldn't get them back in, but if you had the whole building, you would. And then down here is building numbers 1, 2, 3. So that's the way it looked when, in 1947, after the Foster Company had owned it for a few years, and they connected the buildings and then filled in. That's a picture of those buildings not connected yet. 1, 2, 3. And that, I think, is taken from a water tower. This was a library picture. And you can see the tracks. And in the back, I believe that's either a...
Gas tank.
Yeah, it was the gasification. Yeah, over probably where the armory was, or the parking.
To the armory.
Yeah, in that parking area there. Yeah. That was what they worried at the fire of 1898. They worried that tank, the fire would get to that tank, and there would be no east side of Attleboro anymore. It would be flattened. It's an interesting picture. I have to tell you, I finagled a little visit over to the building before it was finished, when they were gutting it next door. And the gentleman who was the comptroller of composite modules said to me, "You can't tell anybody I let you in here." And I said, "Okay, I would never." But then he said, "Well, no, you can." He said, "But you got to sign all these waivers." And I did. No big deal. So he took me around, and you could see the levels of the floor where the three buildings were combined together. Some were higher, some were lower. You know, you could see, okay, that's why that's, you know, the way it is. And at the time, I hadn't done enough research to realize there was all these different levels because they put things together that really didn't fit together. And that's but the best part of that whole thing was when I went to the 5th floor and they had the roof blow off and they had done some rebuilding up there. And what a view of the city. I mean, and I took pictures, which I said, "Whoa, these will be great." He says, "Well, I don't know if you can use these pictures." So I sent them to him, and I don't think he ever sent them back to me. So if I ever find them, I'll post them on the website or on Facebook or make a display here. It'll be interesting. 1940-ish. Looking down Union Street, Union Theater all the way in the back, right here. The Ingraham building, which is it's very similar to the building, Robinson building. 5 stories, brick, lots of windows. The reason I think it was built after the Robinson building, so it was, it benefited from the style there. This was Attleboro Refinery at the time, and I'm not sure, I can't make out names of things there, but it gives you a good view. There's the Gamewell fire alarm right there, and the local fire alarm department head told me the other day, he says, I had to do an inspection next door, he said, and they hadn't taken the Gamewell off the building. And I said, "Don't worry, I'll take it off for you." Because he said it's a beautiful piece. Yeah. He said it's just amazing. So one day, that gentleman may be doing a little presentation here at the museum about some of the different alarms, I'm hoping. That's when Foster Metals owned the place. Again, you can see they still hadn't connected. Nice, sturdy looking fire escape. Same door there as there is now. Same location. So that's a stairway that goes all the way up to the top floor.
Is the elevator still in there?
I don't know. When I went walking through, I didn't see an elevator, but there is an elevator in the middle, yeah.
There was an elevator, yeah.
Yeah. Yep, it's there. I'm thinking it's somewhere near building numbered 1 or 2, or it's in quite a bit.
Why no windows in that one chunk?
I don't know. Good question. Come back. I don't know. Good question. Because there are windows there now.
Probably because it was a stairwell.
Yeah, and they didn't want that. But maybe there aren't windows there. I have to go out and look. That's a good question. As you leave today, ladies and gentlemen, quickly scan to the building.
That doorway is no longer doorway, it's glassed in.
Oh, it is?
I walked by it yesterday.
Ah, interesting. I knew that I didn't know if they would keep it or not. I know there are some, when I get to the floor plan I happen to find of this new building, I will show you. So this is what Foster Metals did. Pretty neat cufflinks, tie bars, cufflink sets, and watch bands. So they had watch bands for men, women, children, flexible bands for your ID bracelets, where you could engrave your name or your sweetheart's name on it or whatever. So this is basically what Foster did, and they did it well. They had a pretty good business for quite a few years. I think up until the mid-'80s, maybe. I don't get into the building after that time. I let you guys look that up. So here's 1969 Sanborn map. 1969, everything's filled in now. So you got the building here, here, and then comes around here. This part of the building is no longer there. There was, in the research I read, in 2003, there was some damage. It was found to be not stable and not secure, so they demolished it. And according to the Mass Cultural Resource Database, they felt that there needed to be more research done about that to find out just what was going on with that. It was kind of a little bit of a mystery. But, and then the museum is, well, actually the refining company in 1969, it became the museum in 1976, but it's a pretty big footprint here. I know the city likes the footprint. So much they might want to take this building. Yeah. And then in March, we had, remember the March in 2018, we had like 4 storms on a Friday. Boom, boom, boom. One of those storms, we were sitting in here around 3:30. We heard this really big noise. We thought it was a tractor trailer making a delivery and he went over something. Well, I came in the next day and I'm driving up Union Street and this is what I see. The roof had been ripped off. So this is 2018.
Was it the wind or the weight of the snow?
No, there was no snow. Oh. There's no snow. It was wind. I think I went and looked up the wind gusts for Attleboro for that day, and it was like 45, 50 miles an hour. So they had just put a new roof on. So maybe they didn't put a new roof on. Maybe there was something wrong. But this is the building the way it looked in 2018. Not pretty. Loading docks here and there, and that last piece over there was gone. I kind of got crazy with this so you could see what happened. That was when they started closing. And there's the roof. Flipped right over on top. Came right over. That building on the left is still there. Now this is the Kidstown side. So it would be, the other side was probably the westerly side, this is the easterly. So you can see, it just took it right off. And it makes me wonder about the, this structural soundness of the building at that point. Another beautiful picture. That was from Kidstown. I'll tell you. When you look at that and you look at what's over there now, pretty good. I don't care if they got $4 million in a grant to do it. It's worth it. A lot of windows boarded up. Composite modules in 2017 and 2018 had a system in there for machining things. So they had some heavy equipment in there. They moved that all out probably 6 months before they did any of this. And that was when the renovation started. So they left the granite timbers in all that kind of good stuff. So one thing, what made this, so yeah, you got one window in there now. What made this design so important architecturally was that the windows, it made for better construction, more windows, better distribution of load in the building. My notes. The brick and segmental arched windows made it easier for larger windows. Larger windows, more light, better ventilation. And it also made for better distribution of the load, the load pressure of the walls on the rest of the building. It was also more efficient use of space. Similar architecture, and I mentioned it before, was repeated in the Ingraham building. And that was a little one I took. I was leaving here probably about the time we'll be leaving here. And I said, that looks pretty neat. It's not bad. And you can see, they used all metal studs in there, which is what everybody uses. Now, this is the artist's rendition of the final product. Okay. They didn't have a driveway in here. They had this nice little walking space and seating area. it looks like, you know, the real deal, you know, and this was done probably 3-4 years ago. So here's the floor plan of the first floor, the way it looks now. So I went in through doorway 1, and then had to be buzzed in by somebody, and then went into the manager's office. And all this stuff can be found, and I'm sorry about this, unionmills37.com. So if you want to look at better photos and what you know, what they're proposing there, I know you won't get any facts and figures. You'll have to call and get the, so kitchen, living room. I think this is a 1-bedroom, but I don't know. I didn't get the bedrooms. This is nice. Some of the windows, and I think,
Ceiling's nice.
yeah, and then you can see out here, I think that's the garage at the police station. This is the old, what's the apartment complex that used to be B.E. Makepeace? Hope Gardens, is it? So that's Hope Gardens. These are the new condos behind on Dunham Street. Over here, you've got some of the building where composite modules are. Another view more into the, I think it's another unit. Kind of a neat picture out here. I think this is, I didn't see the museum anywhere. I think these are composite module buildings, because those I think are 3 floors. And I'm going to end it with this. So we have an 1891 Attleboro map, and all around the map are these little inserts of buildings. And this is the Robinson Building from the 1891. And you can see the 3 buildings as far as I can see, 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure what this one is. And it lists all the companies. So it's got Bliss Brothers, Regnall and Bidney, Smith and Crosby, FM Sadler, Wheaton and Richards, Vanier Slattery, the plumbers, specializing in ventilation shafts, J.W. Luther, J.W. Fisher, R.B. Bullock, and the W.H. Wilmarth, all jewelry manufacturers. Now the map, O.H. Bailey does, and you've heard me spiel about him. He drew maps. He did not make them to scale. So what he did is start in the Midwest and work his way east, and did over 350 maps of communities. So you get a big picture. The one you see as you walk in the door is one that we give away. So if you put your name on a little bit of a piece of paper we have there, we pick them once a month, and for that we'll have enough maps to do that for the next probably 50 years, I think. So, I'm saying maybe we'll step it up. So basically that's what I have. I tried to go more on pictures and less on technical stuff, but I think you get an idea of what that was. Now, I said to somebody, I'm talking about the Robinson Building. Oh, no, that's not the Robinson Building. That's the Foster Building. I said, yeah, for most people our ages, it is the Foster Metal Building. One of the descendants of the Boots family, which owned the Foster Metal Company, came in once and said that it was sad to hear the building get some bad publicity when it had artistic and photographic subletters there. And I was actually talking on the radio with Paul Healy, and I could tell he was going to go there. And I said, well, I have to go now, Paul. And if you don't know that story, look it up. I'm not going to talk about it. But if you have any other questions, I have some resources here I can look up. That's it.
Very nice.
Mr. Murphy.
Dr. Keeler related to Pippin Keeler?
Yes. Actually, you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have done this. So, I thought I had taken and done a little more research, but it was Charles, what was his name? Charles Keeler, and he owned that company for a long time. And as I read, the story got real sad because he went bankrupt and he couldn't find supporters or backers for him. He went, none of the banks in New York who he did a lot of work with, they wouldn't give him the money. This was in the 20s, and he committed suicide when he was in New York. It was sad. It was like, what? I didn't realize. And so, I mean, the Keeler family has had a bit of that kind of stuff happen to him. As he says, Charles Pearson Keeler, and where's his little blurb about the company? He ran that with the Arthur McRae, and then it was Pittman Keeler. So the Pittman family bought out the McRae family, and it became Pittman Keeler for a while. They did actually kind of resurrect themselves. They cleared their debt and continued on with the company. But in the book, there was lots of interesting little tidbits about how he would write letters in World War I to the people who were fighting, just to let them know they were missed, and how, he cared about his folks. And the pictures in there, he looks real young. And so I think that probably were before 1905 or 1910. But very interesting, kind of sad ending. But this is a interesting old man's new biography, or The Keelers of Attleboro. And Dr. Keeler and his wife and son came and gave it to us about 5 years ago. No, longer than that, maybe. So that's it, folks. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you.